Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey, this is Craig Garber. You know me as host of the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, but when I'm not interviewing world-class guitar players, I'm busy helping clients with their marketing. In fact, since March of 2000, I've helped over 300 clients in 108 different industries all over the world sell everything from $20 books to $5,000 seminar seats and everything in between. I even authored a book about my experience called How to Make Maximum Money with Minimum Customers. And now I'm giving away a free marketing strategy session to business owners who qualify. If you can answer yes to any one of these three questions, then this free marketing strategy session will seriously change your business and your cash flow. Here are the three questions. Number one, have you done okay for yourself, but realize you haven't even come close to maximizing your full potential? And is this starting to bother you more and more as time goes on? Number two, would you like to start charging a lot more for your goods and services and only have to deal with those customers or clients who are willing and excited about paying you what you're really worth? And three, have you ever thought to yourself, gosh, if I could ever figure out how to attract more qualified leads simply by differentiating myself from the competition, I'd be making a small fortune right now. If you answered yes to any one of these questions, then this free marketing strategy session is for you. And don't worry, this isn't some sort of disguised cheesy sales pitch. Look, you'll be amazed how a few simple tweaks can change your business so dramatically. And this improvement, along with the increase in net cash flow that results, is what allows you to retire comfortably, put your kids through college, and take those much needed vacations whenever you want to get away without having to think about, can we really afford this now? So book your free marketing strategy session with me right now by going to everyonelovesguitar.com/marketing. Again, to book your free marketing strategy session with me, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/marketing right now. Thanks for listening. Now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber with Everyone Loves Guitar, and we're here with the awesomely talented and awesome guy, James Valentine. He's the lead guitar player from Maroon 5, if you don't know James. He's actually one of the original members of Maroon 5. The band's released 6 albums since 2002, including last year's Red Pill Blues, which they're currently getting ready to tour for. James has earned 2 Grammys with the band, both of them for Best Pop Performance by a duo or group with vocals. One in 2005 for This Love, and one in 2007 for Makes Me Wonder. His older brother got him into guitar. He began playing in bands. He loved it, but he went to the University of Nebraska for advertising because he was told that making a living as a musician was impossible. Talk about sweet revenge. At the time, he was playing mostly fusion, hip-hop, and Latin hybrid around the Midwest, and he also began teaching lessons to help pay for his tuition, along with making pizzas, making copies, doing phone surveys for Gallup, and being a messenger. He entered a regional Battle of the Bands contest, and his band won $25,000, which they used to move to L.A., and you'll get to hear the rest of the proverbial rest of the story during our conversation today. And I have to tell you, this is actually the second time we're doing this interview. We had done like an hour, and down here in Tampa I had a lightning spike, literally the first and only time that's ever happened, and the shit blew up. I mean, that's all I could say. You know, there was no interview, and so I can't thank James enough for, you know, coming back on the show and being so cool about it. Of course, we waited a long time. It was like, you had a really good first date, but we couldn't do the second date that close because we might get attached. So we've had a good enough time frame here. So thank you very much. That was a bad, awful analogy.
Well, okay, so this is the second date.
I own that.
So, well, hopefully it'll go better, and you know, maybe we'll see what happens. We'll just have to
play it by ear, man. No commitments.
Like deja vu all over again.
Yeah, but I'm pumped. Hey, man, that Battle of the Band contest, you guys were number 1 out of 6,000 bands.
Yeah.
Like, how amazing did you feel after you won that?
That was really incredible, because up until that point, music music is not a competition, kids. First of all, I think pretty early on, I was pulled away from sports into music. I wasn't very athletically blessed, so so I got into music, and so being involved with this contest, it was kind of the first time that there had been any sort of competitive stakes involved, and so it was really fun. Now, I'm not saying again, like, I don't think any sort of art that you create, it should not be a contest, and it's not. But we really we didn't expect to win. So we had zero expectations. So everything that happened was just a surprise and a real blessing at that point. Also, just because I was at the point where I was deciding whether or not I wanted to do this for a living or to try to do it for a living or like just trying to figure out what my life was going to be about. And so getting this external validation was important. It was saying like, okay, maybe, there is something special about the way you do this. So, maybe you can give it a shot now. But that was the most important thing that came out of that contest, I think. I mean, not to mention the $25,000, that was like $1 million to us. And that got us set up out in LA. And that's kind of what led to everything.
So it was like the universe supporting your decision to do what you do.
Yeah, or it was a signpost at least.
Yeah.
To saying like, okay, here you go. It was also helpful for my parents and my family and friends. It was a real achievement that I could hold up and say, see, this isn't just a pipe dream, which, it was still a pipe dream, by the way. Like just winning a contest doesn't mean anything. Getting a record deal doesn't mean anything. These are just things that happen along the way. But it was something I could show people and say, hey, look, maybe I do have a little bit of a shot at this.
Have you noticed in general, like when you're doing things, especially new things or, things you might have some trepidation or uncertainty of, that, it's important to get some external validation. Somehow you got to get some external support to like sort of go forward.
Yeah. Well, I think with anything, it really helps to have, in terms of external validation or support, like having a mentor, having people around that you trust that are further along the path. I mean, that can really help in whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I still take guitar lessons. That's why I take tennis lessons. That's why when I'm, as I've gotten into meditation, I have a couple teachers that I go to be like, hey, you just, because you want to make sure that you're putting your time into the right things, and having somebody that's a little further along the path, that can really help. And I think that's different from just pure external validation. I think in the social media age, we're all sort of obsessed with that, and we want the likes, and we put out those thirst traps on Instagram and stuff too, and that's
yeah, that's not the universe
factor. That can be a motivating, that helps me sometimes. Like,
yeah.
Sometimes when I don't often do it, but sometimes I'll post clips of me, playing something. And then it's an interesting exercise because I'll start to play like a lick. I'll be like, oh, I'll post this on Instagram. And then I'll have to I'll start to record it, and I'll be like, wait, I don't really have this down as well as I thought I did. I'm going to put this out there. And so then I play it for 2 more hours, and they're like, oh, okay, now we can post it. So that can be important. But I'm talking about something different, I guess, when I'm talking about, seeking out mentors.
Yeah, no, I think that's so cool that you mentioned that you still take guitar lessons, tennis, and meditation, because, I mean, it's such a the shortcut that somebody who has knowledge about something can give you is just like, really dramatic.
Absolutely. And, there's, at the end of the day, you can take all the lessons you want, or, seek out all the people you want. But at the end of the day, also, it's just up to you to really do the work day in, day out. And that's another thing. I think pretty early on, I was so obsessed with seeking out new knowledge, new ideas. We're like, oh, let me get this guitar book. I got to listen to this guy. But a lot of times it's like, no, just actually sit down and pick up the guitar and do the work.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times I've been guilty of this. I'll seek out the magic bullet, the right answers, and where it's like I could have just spent that time sitting down with my guitar and doing the work.
Yeah. Well, sometimes there's so much information out there. And there's a lot of good information. You get analysis paralysis, and like you said, sometimes, I do a lot of consulting and marketing, and a lot of people are often looking for the magic bullet, as you just said, and like what the magic bullet for this guy might be is nothing to do with you. So you could take that same thing and it'll waste your time on it. But if you just do the woodshedding in whatever form of art or business or thing you're practicing, I think that's worth a lot. Hell of a lot, man. So you moved to LA with the earnings, with the check, the $25,000 check. You guys all went out to LA, correct?
Yep.
Okay. What happened once you got there, and how does that lead to you becoming a member of Maroon 5?
Well, so we end up in LA. We figure we'll take those earnings. We want to get a record deal. That was our goal. This was still the year 2000, and things still sort of operated that way. There was. You wanted to get a record deal because those were really the gatekeepers back then. You couldn't do all this stuff on the front end that you can do now by yourself with the internet. So we got out there and we rented a house in Anaheim. We thought that Anaheim was LA. It's not. It's in a completely different county. But we just looked at the map and we just saw this huge metropolis. We're like, oh, that's all like the same city. And it's actually not, but it actually turned out to be a lucky break for us to be in Orange County because there was a great music scene happening in OC at that time. It was kind of the end of the ska revival. So bands like No Doubt, Sublime had been down there, and a band called Real Big Fish. And we got to know Real Big Fish, and at one point the guitar player for Real Big Fish broke his hand, so I ended up subbing for them. And that was my first real tour. That was my first time on a tour bus. And it was eventually the lead singer from Real Big Fish who took me to my first Cars Flowers show in Pomona, California. And it was Cars Flowers. It was 4 other guys that would become Maroon 5 after I joined. But I saw them play at a little club in Pomona. And I said, oh, shit, these guys are good. These guys are writing incredible songs. And I could see that they needed another guitar player because Adam was kind of putting his guitar down to sing, and Jesse was switching between guitar and piano. And I saw them playing. I was like, oh, they need somebody else, and I think I could be that guy.
And so you thought you could be that guy. How did you become that guy eventually?
Well, I was still committed to my band. We were called Square at the time, and so I thought it would be a good opportunity for Square to open up for Cars Flowers, and I got us an opening spot. And then they saw me play during sound check, and right after sound check, Adam and Jesse came up to say, "Hey, man, we love your guitar playing," and so we made that connection right there. And then after the show, they came over to the Square house, and we all hung out, and we became friends. And I started hanging out with them and sort of jamming with them, and it started off sort of casually, like I was just it was like the way I imagine like an affair would start. You know, it was casual at first. It was like, it didn't mean anything. We're just jamming. We're just jamming, you know? And then they asked me to actually play some gigs with them. And originally under the idea that, oh, well, we're going to find another full-time guitar player eventually, but you could fill in for a while. But I started filling in, and it was going really great. And eventually they sat me down and said, hey, we want you to join. This was right when they were about to sign a new record deal with Octone Records. And they said, we're about to sign this record deal. We want you to be a part of the band and join and be a full member. But you got to quit your other band. So it was one of the hardest decisions that I've ever made. But I kind of knew deep down that it was what I needed to do.
So when you told the guys, well, I'm assuming the guys at Square kind of saw this stuff, what was going on. It probably wasn't like an overwhelming surprise when it happened.
Yeah, it wasn't a shock because they'd been to some of the shows where I was filling in, and it was kind of just like this is heading somewhere. Mm. It was pretty obvious, and Square had been out there for a year, which seemed like a long time. I mean, now it seems like I blink and a year goes by. But we had sort of gone and showcased for all the major labels, and it wasn't really happening. I wasn't really getting along with one of the guys in the band. So it was definitely the right move at that point.
Did you get any brushback, or was everybody like kind of a big boy about it and like, okay, we don't like it, but we get it?
Yeah, everybody was a big boy. They definitely weren't happy, and it was a pretty dramatic scene because we were all living together, and then I tell them that I'm joining this other band, and I left the house because after I told them that, I didn't want to stay in the house, so I went and stayed with a friend of mine, and then came back the next morning with a moving van with Jesse
God, that had to be
from Maroon, and the guys are just sitting there as we're moving my shit out of the house, just sitting on the porch with their arms folded. It wasn't my... It's still to this day, it was one of the most painful things I've had to go through.
Yeah, I'm sure. And have they got... I got to believe, in hindsight, after they've seen what you and the guys in Maroon 5 have put together, they kind of have gotten over it?
Yeah, I think so. I think they understand now, and I'm still friends with these guys, and Ryland, who was the drummer, he stayed out in California, and he ended up becoming the drummer for Real Big Fish, and then he's toured with a bunch of different artists, and right now he's touring. He's the drummer for the band America.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's really cool.
So he's done well, and Sean, who was the lead singer of the band, he moved back to Lincoln, and he's sort of become an elder statesman in Lincoln and producing a lot of younger bands there in Nebraska, which has been great. So we're cool now.
That's good, man. Yeah, that must have been tough. Hey, I'm leaving you, and get another freaking roommate.
Yeah,
I'm leaving the band, and you need someone to fill that bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about, you mentioned Lincoln. I want to talk about that, but just let's deviate for a second. I want to talk about your signature guitar with Ernie Ball, because it's really cool, and I was curious how this whole thing came about. And for you with Ernie Ball, anyway, what was the process of putting the guitar together to your specifications?
Well, I should say, the contest that we won, the $25,000 in that Battle of the Bands, that was sponsored by Ernie Ball.
Oh.
So that's where I initially met Sterling Ball and the whole family. And so I've had that relationship with them ever since. And a signature guitar, it was something that I was never really thinking that I would do. I've gravitated towards the guitars I've gravitated to, but I've never been the guy that's been like, oh yeah, well I needed, this neck radius, and I need the pickups wound specifically this way. It's more like I pick up a guitar and I vibe with it, or I don't. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the way I've always approached it. But I kept on running into the Ernie Ball guys, and I've talked to them forever. I kept on running to Brian Ball, who is the son of Sterling Ball, who is the son of Ernie Ball. So, it's a family business. I kept on running into him. He's like, you should come in. Let's talk about making a guitar. I'd be like, okay, whatever. Because of my loyalty to them, I took the meeting, but I was thinking like, I'll let them down easy. But once we started meeting and talking about it, I realized like, we could actually make something that could be really useful. And we started throwing around design ideas, and we started combining the elements of some of my favorite guitars. And then after that first meeting, had it sort of like the rough design of what it would become, and I became really excited about it. And I realized like, I can design a guitar that does all the things that I need it to do, because I would tour with all these different guitars. I realized, if I changed a couple little things, then I could have one guitar that could make it through our entire set, because we play a lot of different types of songs. So, I'd played Telecasters, so it's most related to a sort of Telecaster. It's got a single coil Tele-style bridge pickup, but then it's got a humbucker in the neck that's, a warmer, jazzier sort of thing. So between those two, and with a coil tap in the humbucker, it sort of gets real spanky and Strat-like. It can do everything I need it to do. And then the design was important to me too. I wanted something that looked classic without looking just like a Tele or a Strat, something that's already been done. I wanted it to look classic but new. And so I think with the design shape that we came up with, like, I'm just really happy with it. It seems to add something. And also, and this is something that Sterling Ball was really adamant about. He's like, what's the point of making a new guitar if we're not adding something technologically, or if there's not some sort of design innovation? And so that was important. So, I think with the coil tap, with the boost circuit built in, that also you can dial in either like from 5 dB, just a nice little transparent boost, or you can go all the way up to like 22 dB, which almost like really overdrives it. You can like if I'm out away from my volume pedal or my pedal board, I can click that on and get this extra boost, which is really cool to play around with, and can really push the amp in a new sort of way. That, and it also has this Ernie Ball proprietary silent system where I'm always dealing with single coil pickups in particular, a lot of noise interference on a lot of the stages we play, and so we this circuit that they've developed, it's one of the quietest ones. Even when I'm got the amp blasted up, it's silent without sacrificing the juiciness from the pickups. So it's got just these little sort of design innovations here and there. I think that's a new guitar should have some of that in it.
Yeah, definitely. Another Telecaster with a different set of pickups in it is just another Telecaster with a different set of pickups
which is cool, and there's
Totally.
It works. The electric guitar design hasn't changed much in 70 years because they pretty much got it right in the 50s. They pretty much nailed it, but that's not to say there aren't some things that could change.
What colors does the guitar come in?
Well, 2018 models, we finally offered the tremolo because everybody wanted that. I don't traditionally play with the tremolo. So the first, the 2017 or 2016 models, they were, they didn't have the tremolo just because I don't generally use that on stage, although I have been using the tremolo one on stage. This is a lot of fun. And they have a tremolo system too that actually stays in tune, which I guess is why I always sort of stayed away from it before. But is that their own tremolo system? Is it like a Wilkinson or a? No, that's their own system,
That's really cool.
And it's really cool. Yeah, it feels great. So this year that we have Husker Red, named after my Nebraska Cornhuskers. We've got Toluca Lake Blue because I belong to the Toluca Lake Tennis and Fitness Club in Toluca Lake, California. And we've got Saturn Gold because we thought that was a cool sounding name.
Oh. It's like, because my favorite car is a Saturn.
Yeah, because I love the Saturn cars. I'm very sad that they went away. And then we also still offer the buttermilk, which has kind of been my main one, which is this really cool milky but transparent finish, so you can see the finish of the wood in there. They're really cool. We've gotten great feedback on it. You know, they're, because I designed it to sort of make it through our whole set. A lot of different types of players, from different sorts of genres have gravitated towards that guitar. A lot of country guys are really into it, obviously, because of its telly heritage, but I'm finding it like a lot of guys in worship bands are using it because I think for the same reason it can kind of cover a lot of stuff. So I'm seeing it there a lot. PJ Morton, who's plays with Maroon 5, but is an amazing artist in his own right. His guitar player, Shemaiah Turner, I posted a clip of him playing it on my Instagram, which you should go check out. James B. Valentine on Instagram. But it sounds great with that stuff. I'm super stoked that Shemaiah is playing it. And, Joe Walsh has been spotted with one.
Wow. That's
which is awesome.
Fancy endorsement.
Yeah, right? So it's really exciting to see them out there, in the wild after it just going from, our brains into production, and then you see it out there and you're like, wow, that's really cool.
Does it have a pick guard?
Yes, it does. The new, depending on the color, there's a black or tortoise shell or white.
Cool. What I think is really cool is that, and I actually, it sounds wimpy, but I got kind of goosebumps when you said that contest was sponsored by Ernie Ball, because how, weird is, how random is that? They sponsor the contest, and years later, you become James B. Valentine, and now you're working with them and you get a custom guitar. I mean, that's just that bug that, like if someone would have told, no one could have told you that.
Yeah, totally. And, it's because I think about the kid that I was when we entered that contest, and I remember just coming to NAMM for the first time in 2000 and just being at the Ernie Ball booth and seeing like John Petrucci was there to do a signing and just be like, whoa, this is insane. So I never would have thought that my picture would be up next to those guys. It's really insane. But it also makes total sense, because I don't think that I would have done it because I already had like 20 years of knowing those guys.
Right.
I really felt like, and it's a family business, and I felt like part of the family, and I don't think I would have done it with anyone else that I didn't have that level of trust with. And you just don't have that level of trust unless you have a relationship that goes back that far.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. That's a great story. I'm real happy you got this guitar now. Let's go back to Lincoln. You grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska. What was your childhood like?
Yeah, Lincoln's an awesome place. I was really lucky. Lincoln had a really amazing music scene. A lot of great talent came out of Lincoln and Omaha. One of my best friends growing up that I've known since the third grade is a guy named Nate Walcott, and we formed a lot of our first bands together. And he's out here in LA now, just totally killing it as a film composer, but also as a sideman. He's currently playing keyboards for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and
wow!
And he's also a member of the band Bright Eyes, who are who've made incredible records and toured, the world over a million times. And, maybe in the future we'll get some stuff going on again. We were both a product of Lincoln Public Schools, which we had a great teacher in junior high together, and then he went to a different high school. But we both played in the all-state jazz band together, and there was just a real supportive community of older musicians that provided a real sort of fertile ground for young talents. So I'm really grateful to have been from there.
And in your bio, it said your brother got you into playing guitar. How many in your family? How many kids?
I'm one of 5. Yeah, my older brother, he's 7 years older than me, and he had a garage band, or I should say basement band. Yeah. In Nebraska, everybody's got a basement in case of the tornadoes. And I used to sit at the top of the stairs down to the basement and listen to them rehearse, and then wait until they, ran out to 7-Eleven or wherever, and then I'd go down and mess around with the instruments. And it was so awesome, that to have that exposure early on. I don't think I would have gotten into it without that exposure.
Did your brother still play?
He plays piano at church, but he's a doctor now, so wow. Not much time to do the other stuff.
Do you go back home often, or ever?
Well, my parents, they moved back to Utah, so I don't make it back to Nebraska too often. Although I went back to Nebraska last spring to do a concert with the Nebraska Jazz Orchestra, which is a group of guys that were there when I was growing up, including my old guitar teacher, my old high school jazz band teacher, and we actually did a concert featuring me on guitar, which is a total trip. Yeah. A lot of fun playing jazz. I hadn't played, that much jazz in a while either, so I was actually more nervous for that gig than anything Maroon 5 has done recently.
60,000 fans in a stadium, right?
Totally.
So this is interesting. So you have a pretty eclectic background, because I know you played a lot of fusion, hip hop, Latin, and it sounds like you rooted in jazz early on as well. That's pretty cool. What do you like playing? If you pick up a guitar, what do you like playing? Obviously, it depends on the mood, but.
Well, I like, usually when I'm practicing, I'm working on some sort of jazz concept. Early on, I imagined that I was going to be a jazz musician, and I walked down, a different path, getting into pop music and rock music, but I still really enjoy working on that sort of stuff. And so when I'm playing, kind of for my own pleasure, I'm usually working on something related to jazz. That's the music that I really love listening to, and it's a never-ending source of inspiration, even for the stuff that I do in pop and rock music. There's just so much to learn and explore harmonically in jazz that you can dip into that and just come out of that with so many different ideas and inspirations. That's why I always go back to it. It's just a never-ending well.
Man, I'm smelling James Valentine Trio at some point in time.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. But like I said, it's like the guys who've devoted their lives to that, they are so good. It's just it's a different language, and I do something different. So I could have a bad jazz trio. Maybe that's what I'll call it. It's just the James Valentine
bad
fake jazz.
Yeah.
There's fake news.
Fake news, fake jazz. There you go.
Fake jazz.
I will buy that record. Honey, I got to download. What are some of the, I think the thing with, having to break up or how to exit your band was probably very tough, but have there been any other obstacles that you feel that you've had to overcome along the way, or just things that challenges that you had to meet head on at some point?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, there's challenges every day. I think just I think that we were blessed to have some success early on, but it was tough to get there. For Maroon, we toured, that first record for 4 years. So the challenges of just keeping up the motivation as things were coming together so slowly, and then also the challenges of just keeping it all together after the success that we had, because if you've ever watched behind the music, that success can be just as detrimental to a band as failure. So just dealing with the excesses of the road, or the bad habits that you can get into from being a touring rock musician, I think are well documented. And so I think just sort of staying healthy, basically keeping our shit together, has always been a challenge that we continue to face head on. I just, not to compare us to Elvis, but there's a great documentary that's on HBO right now that you can watch on just the life of Elvis, and just seeing his ups and downs. And then, I think, like so many other musicians, he just got into some bad habits of just trying to keep up with the pace of the road and the life. He had the pills to wake him up, and the pills to take him down, and you can, having been on the road and toured extensively, you can really empathize with artists who've developed those sort of problems and addiction. I think it can happen real fast. So, and we've lost so many great musicians recently for similar sort of reasons, and so I think that's always a challenge to sort of just keep it together.
Couple of questions. First of all, thank you for sharing that. You mentioned you toured, and I didn't know this, I bet you nobody knew this, because Maroon 5 is big, but you don't see the touring for 4 years for the first record. What was like? Yeah. Were you guys in a van, or were you in a bus, or what was that first 4 years like, or the first year of the 4 years like?
Yeah, we were in a van. I mean, we were signed to an independent label. So we were on like a farm team label. We weren't on one of the big record labels. The guys who started Octone Records, they had a great idea. They were working for Clive Davis at J Records at the time, but they went out and they got their own funding, and with Clive's blessing, they started their own label that would sort of act as an incubator. And so they said, we'll use this money that we've raised to put this band out on the road, and to go, to radio station by radio station. And if things are starting to work out, then J Records can have, a 50-50 split and get in on it. And it was a great idea, and it worked for us, but it was a lot of work because we didn't have the resources of a major label. So we just went out onto the road, and we were in a van, and things were starting to spread by word of mouth, and we'd go into radio stations, not to perform on the radio station. We'd go in, buy them pizza, and play for them at lunch, acoustically.
Right.
Just to be like, hey, we're a new band, here's our songs, think about adding us to your playlist. And slowly, over those first couple of years, we got an ad here, an ad there. And this was also the beginning of MP3 trading on the internet. So on college campuses, kids were starting to trade the songs, because we knew they weren't buying the records, because we could see from SoundScan we still weren't selling any records, but we'd go show up in into wherever, Arkansas, and kids were singing along to our our album. And like, well, they heard this. They didn't hear it on the radio. They didn't buy it in a record store, so they heard it somehow. You know, and the only time, you know, the only place that you could really trade music at that point was on college campuses because they had that T1 internet connection. Okay. You know, people didn't really have that in their homes. Not everybody yet. People were still dialing up and stuff. So it was like, it was a different era. And that really helped us in the beginning, but it was a slog. It was a lot of time in that van, you know, but it was a great time because people ask if we were discouraged during that time, but every week something was happening. We were getting like a few more spins or a few more record sales. And when I say a few, I mean a few. Like we would see our sound scan and be like, oh, well, we sold 50 records this week. And then the next week, wow. We sold 70 records this week. Okay, and then 100 and then 200. And it kind of built like that.
Interesting.
And so we had to keep the faith, but things were always moving in the right direction.
Well, it's funny you said that you get people ask if you get discouraged. That was going to be my next question is how did you pull into town and like everybody knows your songs, no one's buying the records. That or could be like discouraging, but those little incremental bumps kept you motivated that at least things were going in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And then from going out on our own, I think we did have, I think early on, a lot of different artists saw us and saw the potential and believed in us. I mean, the first one was Michelle Branch, who was coming off some huge records at the time, and she brought us out. That was our first big tour opening up for someone. It was with her. Props to Michelle for believing in us early on. And then John Mayer took us out, which was a huge break for us. And that was a lucky break for us because I had attended in 1996 Berkeley summer camp, basically, at the Berkeley College of Music. And I had become friends with John back then. He was also attending. He was just still living with his parents in Connecticut, and he came to check this thing out too. I wanted to go to the Berkeley College of Music. I couldn't afford it. So, but this summer program was a week long, and I could swing that. So I went out there and became friends with John then, and eventually got him an unmixed copy of our first record. And he also took a chance and had us come out and open up for him, which was a huge break for us.
That's a great story, man. I didn't know that you went to school with John. Or summer guitar camp.
Yeah.
It's very cool. During this whole period of time, everybody makes mistakes or pays tuition in whatever we do. Are there one or two things or a mistake that you can think of that you made along the journey? And then, what are the lessons that you learned from it in a constructive way?
What comes to mind is just, I think when I was younger, I had more of a sense of entitlement, and I think I was less likely to just sit down and do the work, and I was quicker to blame circumstances or others for not achieving the things that I wanted to achieve.
You mean in the time frame that you thought you should have achieved them in?
Yeah, or just sort of with anything that's a very general. But I think there's this sense of personal responsibility or responsibility for your own actions, and I think maybe that's the sort of main theme of. I think any mistakes that I've made would be related to something like that.
If you had to go back and give advice to your younger self, assuming you were willing to listen, what advice would you have given young James Valentine?
Well, I always think about this, and the one thing that I would say is would be, it's sort of related to what we were talking about earlier, but my main piece of advice to younger James Valentine would be to get in the habit of writing for the trash can. Write songs every day. Write. I think, early on, I was interested in becoming a guitar player, and I wasn't as interested in the writing side. And as I got in this band with Adam and Jesse and Mickey and Ryan, who were all really great songwriters and really focused on songwriting, sometimes I say like I had a great paid internship in songwriting, and then sort of seeing the discipline that it takes to be a great songwriter. Being all these years around so many amazing writers of music, I see the daily sort of discipline and focus that takes, and I think I was afraid to dip my toes into that when I was younger, because I would here and there come up with something and then be like, oh, this is cool. But I wasn't really dedicated to the craft of getting in there and doing the work every day. So when younger people ask me for advice, I'm just like, write every day, write bad songs, just get in the habit of writing, because it's a habit like anything else, and in order for it to flow, you need to turn on the tap and let it all come out, whether or not it's like dirty brown water or crystal clear, beautiful, delicious water. Just needs to flow out, and the only way to learn to do it is by doing it. And it's so easy to trick yourself into saying like, oh, well, I'm not inspired today, or like, well, if I study more theory, then I'll be able to do this. No, just do it. And then in the process of figuring out what's wrong with the songs, they get better. Yeah. And it's a long game. But start putting in the work now.
Do you write now?
Yeah. Although, to be honest, I'm giving that speech to myself right now, because I've kind of been, as the year sort of started, and then we've been getting ready for tour and stuff, like I kind of been focused on other things, and that's okay. But I haven't done a ton of writing so far this year. So this speech is equally for myself.
Good, man. I hear you. No, I mean, it's, we all got to give ourselves speeches.
Yeah.
Do you talk to yourself? Because I do. I mean, like when shit's going on, sometimes like out loud. Do you ever do that?
I guess maybe not as much out loud, but I do journal. So a lot of it is more, I guess in that sort of form.
Internal dialogue, sort of.
Yeah.
Well, I only talk out loud when the shit is really hit the fan, like emotionally. Then I like, Craig, think about this, walk this through. And I'm like, sometimes my wife will be like, I'll be in the shower and do a lot. She goes, what are you doing?
Oh, that's amazing.
And it's like, and I'm like, shit, I got busted. I'm like, just talking. She goes, to who? I was like, don't worry about it.
That's awesome.
Let's talk gear for a few minutes. Are you playing only your Ernie Ball Valentines, or do you still pick up other guitars now and then? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, I mean, I pick up some other guitars in the studios, but mostly, live I'm just playing the Valentine. But, I still have some of my vintage guitars that I play. I've got a lovely ES-175 from the 60s. It's pretty rad. I've got...
That's a major jazz box, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to play, so I'll play that, just for my own pleasure. I've got a 63 Strat it's a refin Strat that it's just super vibey that I bought from a friend of mine. It's awesome. And then my original Telecaster that's sort of a Frankenstein's monster of different parts that I've always dug. And my Fano guitars, the JM6s, I still like those. They've got P90s in them, so it's different from like my Valentines or anything I have. But those are great. I've got there's a luthier from Sweden named Johan Gustafsson that I have. It's a Les Paul type of sort of thing that he makes called the Blues Master that I really like. I've had that for years. I used to play that on stage. And then what else do I play? Oh, and then my Collins I-35, which is kind of my 335 style guitar. I really love that guitar.
I hear nothing but good things about that. I've talked to so many guys who play those. They really love them.
Yeah.
Anyone who influences, are there any players who influence your playing that people might be surprised to hear?
Well, I think my three favorite, for me, the holy trinity of contemporary guitarists is Pat Metheny, Bill Frisell, and John Scofield. And so they've been a huge influence on my playing. And, I don't play jazz, but like I was talking about, I do play jazz for my own enjoyment. Yeah. I'm not known for playing jazz, but that's for me been a main source of inspiration. And that's sort of harder to sort of maybe hear in our music. But when I sit down and play, because all those guys are such great composers. And so, I don't know. It's just, I get so much just from sitting down, trying to transcribe what they're doing or just playing one of their tunes. Like it's always so inspirational.
Man, I bet if you busted out a jazz thing, it's probably a hell of a lot better than you're giving yourself credit for, because you're pretty immersed in this and have been so for a long time.
Yeah, you would think I would be better at it than I.
Look, what professional in any capacity is not harder on themselves than anything? I would bet that your jazz would be real tasty. You're looking at Pat Metheny, Bill Frisell, and John Scofield, like, probably you could hear a difference, but I would be willing to bet your stuff was good.
Well, you can think that. Thank you.
It's a ruse. Or not.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. Man, all I know is now if you have a jazz thing, you got to come on here and, showcase it to the world first on this show.
For sure.
Desert Island Discs. If I ask you your 3 Desert Island Discs in no particular order, and knowing this can change tomorrow, what are the first 3 albums that come to mind?
Okay, well, let's go with those 3 guys that I was talking about. Pat Metheny, Bright Size Life. Bill Frisell, Gone Just Like a Train. And John Scofield, A Go-Go. Boom.
There you go. Quick enough. All right. This is a really tough question. Question is, what do you like most about yourself? I know it's not your jazz playing, so let's get that on the table.
What do I like most about myself?
It's a weird question, isn't it?
I think what I like most about myself is my humility. I'm the most humble person.
I love these. You took your humor pills this morning, man. You're like, the intellectual humor is like off the charts here today, James.
Man, yeah, my humility. I think if you ask people,
I'm so into
I'm one
my
of the
humility.
most humble people that you'll ever meet.
You are very humble.
No,
that's so funny. Oh my God.
Yeah, that works on that works on levels.
Oh my God.
No, I don't know.
You know what? I asked that question, and I'm trying to think who said it. It was a really funny answer. I said, "What do you like most about yourself?" And he said that I'm not very introspective. That was another clever answer. Like, okay,
wow.
where do you go from there? I know that was hilarious. So, man, this is like the SAT, man. You got to have an answer.
You got to have an answer. Okay.
You can't skip a question.
I think one thing that has served me well I think I'm relatively patient, and I think that can be that's been really helpful. I think maybe that's one of my superpowers.
Awesome.
Because I think people are generally not very patient, and I don't know why. I think it was being like one of 5 kids, where you're kind of like,
you got no choice.
There's no choice. You kind of just need to wait your turn, and so I think that's helped me a lot.
That's really cool.
But yeah, I don't. For whatever reason, I have that, but I don't like to answer that question. I'm sure no one does.
No, it's an awkward question. That was great, though. My humility.
Well,
everybody loves that. Was very good. That one, and like I said, the other one is I'm not very introspective. That was really, those two were
that's a good
neck
one.
And neck. I know you had a great growing up. What would you say your best childhood memory is?
From the ages of about 10 to 12, I got into fencing, sword fighting. And we actually started competing, and it was one of the first, I guess, like I said, I wasn't really into sports, but that was one thing. And I made it to this pretty far in this tournament, and then I beat this kid that was supposed to have been much better than me.
Some Karate Kid shit going on there.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And I just remember feeling a profound sense of accomplishment at that point. And just really cool. Okay, that's just a random one. I haven't thought about that for a long time.
That's really cool. Someone or something you miss from your childhood?
Man, well, I was really lucky. I had a lot of good, close friends growing up and back in Nebraska, and we're kind of, although a couple of them actually live out here in LA now, but like on the other side of town, so I don't get to see them as often, those close friends as much, but we had a good crew, including guys that I would, sort of started my first bands with. And so I kind of realized that, the friendships in my life have been really important. And that's why it's great within the band that we have such close friendships. And that sense of community has always been really important to me. But yeah, I wish I saw my old friends from Nebraska more often.
That's gotta be tough. I mean, like, you think how tough it is getting on in a marriage, which is why, like, there's 60% divorce rate, to be in a band, that's exponentially greater with each successive person that involves in this situation. It really is pretty difficult and pretty impressive to hang in there and still do so much and be so productive and get along.
Yeah.
Another tough question, and you may not be able to answer this one. If you didn't become a professional musician, what do you think you would have done?
Well, I was studying advertising in college, and I was pretty sure that's what I was going to do. And I almost graduated. I have one more semester left, but I had made it to the advanced classes in advertising, which were campaigns classes where you actually implemented advertising campaigns. And I always, I thought this would be a fine way to make a living. It allowed you to be creative. And that was the part of it that I really liked. And I figured I'd be like a copywriter and just work on ideas for ads like that. That's probably exactly what I would have done.
That's what I've done for the last 20 years. I don't know if you know that. That's what primary bulk of my income has come from consulting and writing ad copy for the last 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's always it's still funny. I think that would have been fun and challenging in a different sort of way.
Yeah, it is.
But related to to creativity. That's what I wanted to do.
Man, go back, get your degree. Get your jazz album and market the shit out of it.
All right. There we go. It all comes together.
It all comes together. Tell me something about yourself people would either be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
Surprised to hear or might find a little odd. Well, the older I get, the more I get interested in meditation. And so I meditate every day. Sometimes, generally I try to meditate at least an hour a day, but more if I can.
That's
and that's when people hear about that, they find that a little odd. But I encourage anyone but I think once you start getting into it, it feels more challenging not to do it. So I encourage people to check it out. If people want to, people always ask me too, well, how do you even get started? And it is very intimidating to start to even try to do it. So you have to seek out a good teacher. But because of technology now, there's a lot of great ways to get into it. There's an app called Bright Mind that was developed by one of the teachers that I'm really into, a guy named Shinzen Young. And he developed this app that has his basic sort of instructions for meditation on it. So it seems kind of like, well, that doesn't seem very spiritual to sit with an app, like on your iPhone. But it's just, it has his very sort of, like anything else, you start off with training wheels, which would be like a guided meditation where they actually talk you through, what you should be doing, because, you could just say like, okay, well, just sit down and, focus on your breathing for half an hour. It's like, well, for most people, it's a little open-ended. You're not going to get much out of that. So they sort of hold your hand and guide you through the process. And so I encourage, that's another thing that I wish I would have started doing much younger, because at the end of the day, it's just mind training. It's like going to the gym for your brain. It's not anything like mystical, or even, it can be spiritual for you, or you don't even have to use that word.
Yeah.
It's just mind training, because our minds are so all over the place. And especially as guitar players, I think, one of the reasons I got into it is because I wanted to become a better musician. And, it means more to me now than just that. But just notice where your mind is at while you're practicing. And notice about all the things that you're thinking about and imagining while you're practicing. If you're like me, in one practice session, you're just like, you're so all over the place. And it's interesting to observe. And most of the time, like, we're just not aware of all that sort of wandering and movement. And so I think it can be an interesting thing to check out.
Another one I have is Budify, Budhify, I think is another. It's probably a baby version of the Bright Minds one that you just talked about. They walk you through meditation.
That's cool. Yeah, there's been a whole it's one of the coolest things to come out of all these new technologies, like all the resources available to learn guitar and stuff like this. There's another app called Headspace that's really popular, that's also great. I mean, I think there's a million different ways to get into it.
And I'm pretty sure I asked you last time, have you read 10% Happier?
I didn't read it, but I listened to Dan Gilbert's podcast, which is great. And there's an episode where he interviews Shinzen Young, that teacher, and that podcast is great. Yeah, I should check that book out.
Yeah, anybody, if you're into like meditation and you're either skeptical or you don't understand it, or you're like, do I have to pray to somebody? Do I have to chant? Read this book, 10% Happier. And is that his name, Dan Gilbert? I thought it was somebody else.
Is that it?
No, it's not Dan Gilbert. It's somebody else.
No.
He's a newscaster, and it was a really interesting, and it's a very easy book to read, man. And it just talks about, he was on this kind of like reckless journey going nowhere, and then
Dan Harris.
Yeah, Dan Harris. I knew it was something Harris. I couldn't think of his first
Who's
name.
Dan Gilbert?
Paul Gilbert's brother. I don't know. But yeah, it's just an interesting book, and he was on this kind of reckless journey, and then what he did was he did like a news expose. He wanted to find out, like, he investigated basically a bunch of self-help gurus, and what he found, the only thing that quote worked, which meaning delivered, helped him feel better about himself, which is why, you should do anything to, not in a narcissistic way, but to feel better about where you're at in your life, and to, as you just said, train your mind. He was out of control and he couldn't, was meditation. And it's just an interesting book. And it for me, it gave me permission to get into meditation, because I always thought you had to do the Om and all that, and the religion. I thought there was a religious aspect of it, and I read that, and it really helped me, realize that was nothing to do with it, only if you wanted to. So, Dan Harris, 10% Happier. Most important person in your life?
Whoa. I mean, my family, which is not one person. As a children of 5 and now with 13 nieces and nephews.
Holy smokes.
Like, just my immediate family, that's like 23 people. So.
All right. Most important 23 people in your life. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Most important thing your dad taught you?
My dad would always say, which I think about every day, do things once. As in, like, like, if a bill comes in the mail and you're holding it in your hand, pay it. Don't put it aside to do some other time. Like, that's kind of really, that's helped me. That's been, and then I remember like reading on some sort of like productivity blog, they had a different version of that, which was the 2-minute rule. If you can do it in less than 2 minutes, then do it right then.
Yeah.
Which kind of relates to that. That's been helpful. But he would always say that.
Another one is like that, is like do, delegate, or destroy. Like either handle it, give it to someone else, or trash it. One of those three, and do that like immediately,
Totally.
What kind of work did your dad do?
Well, he was a professor at the University of Nebraska. That's how we ended up in Lincoln. But then he left academia, and then he was in sales, international sales, because he could speak different languages. He taught he taught contemporary Latin American literature in Spanish. And so then he sort of was a traveling sales guy.
That's cool.
And then sort of like went into retirement selling real estate.
Very cool. So
he did a lot of different stuff.
Very cool, man. How about your mom? What's the most important thing she taught you?
My mom taught school before she had us, and she had a very she was so nice to everyone and really treated everyone. She really taught me how to treat people. And she would encourage, like when I was young, there were, the kids that were having trouble, maybe the less popular kids. When I was growing up, she would encourage me to be friends with and would invite them over to play and to include them. And, and now, I sort of see, these were kids from troubled homes and troubling sort of circumstances. And she just had such a big heart. She, she would always have us include those kids. It was a real sort of service oriented, just real big heart. And, I think that really hopefully affected me in the right way.
Yeah. She sounds super maternal, man. That sounds very nice. Yeah. Very cool. Are you single or married?
I'm single.
Okay. You don't have kids, right?
Nope.
All right. have kids, and then we revisit the patience thing, man.
Sure, yeah.
That's what I want to do. Any hobbies or interests outside? We actually have a bunch of tennis, meditation.
Yeah, tennis is my big. It was awesome. Like, I didn't really start playing tennis until I was like 30. I didn't start playing it seriously until that was like 10 years ago. And because up until then, basically music, I was so lucky music was my living, my career, and it was also my only other hobby. So, it's like
your career, yeah.
So to have a hobby that's not related to what I'm doing creatively or professionally was important. I mean, Of course, it is related in a way, but that's a whole other discussion. But it was great. It's great to have something that you do just purely for fun. There's no stakes in it.
Yeah.
Like they're just the stakes that I put on it, but like I'm not starting to play tennis at 30. I'm certainly not going to become a professional. I won't even be the best player at my club ever. I just won't. Which makes it a lot of fun. But I can still, put the pressure on myself to get better, and that's why it's fun. But it's for fun.
You're like really healthy in general. I really respect that, the people in general that take care of that. You're balanced. You're working, or you're always doing things to balance yourself. You take care of yourself. People don't realize how important it is to take care of themselves physically, man. It's just shit. I look at some of the people I went to high school on Facebook, and I'm like, holy, I call my wife over sometimes and say, baby, do I look that bad? And like, no. But you got to take care of yourself, man. I think
you got it.
It's so important, man. Sorry against any of the people I went to high school. I'm not talking about you particularly. No. Man, what's the favorite and least favorite places you've traveled? You've been all over.
I love going to Japan. That's amazing. It's like a different world.
In what way? Because I've heard that from a few people.
Well, you start touring and it's kind of shocking. You go to Western Europe or around to a lot of places, and you're like, oh, I figured that this was going to be much different, but you look around and it's like, well, there's KFC and there's the Gap and people are also, the world is so flat now with people. They all listen to the same things. They have the same cultural references. But then you go to Japan and you're like, okay, what the hell is going on? You still see some of the same things, and there is still a lot of sharing of, especially music. They're such big fans of music, but it's when you're walking around and you realize like, okay, I can't read any of the signs. And culturally, there's so many differences. The audiences are different in the way they interact with the artists. Like when you play, they'll applaud and then go completely silent in between songs because they want to hear everything that you're going to say in between. It's very respectful, but it's kind of jarring at first because you're like, are they completely not even into the show? Because you're used to like more, Americans like will just be yelling and sort of screaming and woo, and, throughout the entire thing. But you can hear a pin drop in between songs when you're playing in Japan.
It's interesting. I saw something on Facebook recently, and it had like a subway station in like Manhattan and a subway station in Japan. Like you could eat off the floor, and the one in Manhattan obviously had rats crawling all over, just utter filth. So the cleanliness thing is definitely different over there. Have you ever had a specific experience, James, that changed your life or altered the way you think about things?
A big thing for me was when I was in junior high. I think joining the jazz band as a guitarist, that was huge for me because I only joined the jazz band just because it was the only class that I could play guitar in. I was interested in guitar, but at that time I was purely interested in rock music. And so I joined the jazz band, and that sort of exposed me to a whole another realm of music that I hadn't considered before, and definitely set me on the path that I'm on now.
That's very cool, man. Most important lesson your business has taught you?
I think the most important thing that the business has taught me, that once again, it's that you got to show up and do the work, and you got to show up every day. And if you want to get everything out of it, and that's just a lesson that I just continue to learn over and over again. Got to show up and do the work. It's pretty simple, but you'd be amazed at how many people try to weasel out of just not doing it.
What do they say? It's easy, or simple, but not easy.
Yeah, exactly.
And the last question, man, biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of this change has been deliberate, and how much has just been a natural part of aging?
Well, in the last 10 years, that's from 30 to 40. So, man, I mean, I am a pretty introspective sort of guy, so I'd like to think a lot of it's deliberate, but I think in general, I think I've calmed down a little bit. I think the 30-year-old me was pretty fired up, pretty jacked up, trying to just constantly moving and just trying to get things going on. And I think at 40, I'm a little more inclined to sit back and smell the roses a little bit.
Very cool, man. Hey, I cannot thank you enough. I want to tell people like how to support you. First of all, thank you for your time, your patience. You are patient, and just for being so introspective and sharing that. That was very kind of you, and I very much appreciate it. First of all, if you're a guitar player, and like almost everybody listening to this is a guitar player, check out James's guitar. It's the Ernie Ball Music Man Valentine, and he's got it in Husker Red now, so check it out. And he also plays it a lot on his Instagram, which is James V. Valentine, and you can see him there. Also, obviously, Maroon 5 is getting ready to gear up and go on tour. Come out and support the band. I was going to say, go say hi to James when you see him, but that ain't going to that's not likely to happen. And then you're really you are behind an organization called reverb.org. That's not the Reverb where you buy guitars. This is called reverb.org. So you want to talk about that a little bit? And I know you're passionate about it.
Yeah, it's a great environmental organization, and I've been involved with them for the last few years on a few issues, including the issue of illegal logging. A lot of tone woods that we're after are wrapped up in this illicit, illegal logging industry, which is not only detrimental to the environment, but also has a real human toll. A lot of organized crime around it. It's we call it bloodwood because that it's just like blood diamonds.
Blood diamonds, yeah. I didn't know there was a criminal
just as
element
serious
around.
Oh yeah, it's huge. So Reverb, along with an organization called the Environmental Investigation Agency, they got me involved on just becoming aware of this issue and sort of spreading awareness on it. But Reverb is a great organization. They're also out with us helping keep our tours green. Obviously, like touring has a pretty big environmental impact. So they're there to try to mitigate the bad effects of touring, and great organization. So check them out. Yeah,
it's reverb.org, and it looks like a lot of pretty high profile bands are part of it. Maroon 5, John Mayer, Jack Johnson, The Dead and Company, Linkin Park, Fish, Zach Brown, Dave Matthews, and Tim Reynolds. So there's lots of good stuff going on there. So check it out. It's reverb.org. And that's it, man. Any final words of wisdom?
You know what? I pretty much laid out all the wisdom of the universe in the last 90 minutes. I'm all tapped out.
You know, man, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. So thank you for that wisdom. And
Thank you.
I hope to speak to you again. Listen, thank you, man. Seriously, you've been really great.
Good.
It's been a real pleasure to talk to you and had a good time.
Right on.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thanks again so much to James Valentine for spending his time with us. Support Maroon 5. Check out his Instagram, James B. Valentine, and check out reverb.org because he's super passionate about him. And check out his Ernie Ball Music Man Valentine. Where do people get the Ernie Ball Music Man Valentine?
Wherever guitars are sold.
Wherever guitars are sold. There you go.
Well, most places. I mean, Guitar Center, Sam Ash, Sweetwater.
Or you could email James. He'll give you a list.
Just email me.
Just email him. Specs, colors, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks again to James for spending time with us. What a cool guy. Go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get notified about future episodes along with some early product announcements and discounts, and get on the newsletter. And remember, this is important. Happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.